platforms as we can. Okay, so let's see here. So welcome. My name is Hung Lu. So welcome to Money Matters on Monday. Yeah, Money Matters on Monday. A lot of M's, M's, and M's. So we are November 20th, 2023. So if you are watching this and it's not live for you, it is not live. So let me go and make this live on some of the different platforms. All right, so there we go. All right, so give me 1 second here while I update some of these tabs here and we can get going. Let's see, so let's see. Okay. All right, so we are good. So we are going to, yeah, we are starting now. So hello, everybody. Oh, and we are recording there. Got it. It's being live streamed. Okay, so hello, everybody. Welcome, welcome. So it is Monday, November 20th. Yeah, November 20th. I'm looking at the right date. Welcome to Money Matters. My name is Hung Lu, and I am with Cash Property. And in the next 30 minutes, we've been pretty good at keeping it to the 30 minutes with a little bit of overtime sometimes. So today we are going to go through two analysis. I'll show you guys a GPLP structure, an initial one, and then maybe like another day we'll talk about like the waterfall structure. So for now we'll do the GP, and then it also occurred to me that I've never actually walked through a flip calculation online. I do it in my coaching sessions, but I haven't done one on live. So we will go through a flip calculation, and then I will answer some questions that came through. And yeah, we have a lot of questions today. So I probably won't be able to get through all of the questions. It depends on how fast or how much information I can share about the flips and the GPLP structure. So let me bring up the Excel sheet and we will get started on some of the shares and the Excel sheet. So let me see here. So let's do the flip first, because that will be the easiest thing to explain. So I'm going to share the flip screen. Okay, so you should see the Excel sheet right now. So this is a standard sheet, and I can't remember where I got this. I might have gotten this from Danielle, who is a colleague of mine out of Hamilton, and she is a professional flipper out of Hamilton. And yeah, we did a 5-part series about flipping. And so if you are just getting into flipping or want to know more about how a professional flipper does it, this would be the way to go. Okay. And then I will also get the 5-part series link, because that is on YouTube. And I will include that in the link for the content. So if you want to go and watch the 5-part series and learn everything imaginable about flipping, that would be the place to go. Okay, so let's start with this spreadsheet. Okay, and so when you have a flip, okay, you want to have this in front of you as you're walking through the property, and you're going to just assign prices all along this column H, and you're basically just going to apply the cost that it would take you or your contractor to fix that item. Okay, now sometimes, just as a quick, easy way to run the numbers, if I'm walking through and I don't have like specific details yet, but I think, oh my God, I think this place is going to take 100,000. I will literally just go down at the very bottom and just type in 100,000. Okay, and I know that it's on the line for decks. It doesn't mean that it's just for the decks. It's for the entire project. Okay, so this is one of the easy ways. Like, within 5 minutes, you can say, hey, you know what? This is what my offer should be. Okay, so then I will also include a 10% buffer. This really depends on your comfort level. If you are new to flipping, new to real estate, if you're using a new contractor, you might want to increase this 10% to 15 or 20%. Okay. Now, there are some considerations when you do that. For example, if you increase this to 15 or 20%, then you are going to potentially put yourself out of the running to buy this property, because you're going to, the offer price that you're going to give is going to be too low. Okay. Now, of course, the risk is that if you don't put that buffer in, you could have project overruns, okay? And that project overrun for renovations is one of the three ways that you lose money in a flip, okay? So this 10%, even though it's a buffer, you may or may not use it. It is a very important number to consider in your calculations, okay? So now this spreadsheet calculates for me, okay, 110,000 is what I'm going to need for renovations. Okay, so let's just say, you know, my after repair value, I think this building could be worth 350 to 425. Okay, if you're in a higher market, then you know your after repair value might be $1 million. If you know, for the low end, so this is low. The number on the left, the 350 is the low after repair value, and the high end number is on the right end, the 425. These numbers come from, number one, experience or comps from your agent, okay? Or you can look at what other people are selling comparable units for and get an idea saying, okay, you know what, this other house similar to mine, they fixed it up and they sold it for 375. Okay, and so then you sort of have a range to work with. Okay, so then what happens is, based on your after repair value, okay, now some people might call that the ARV. Okay, so if you're hearing that lingo, the ARV, then that's what that means. Okay, so now you're going to say, okay, that after repair value, I'm going to assume I'm overestimating, okay, because that's the second way within the three ways that you could lose money, is that you overestimate your AVR, okay, ARV, okay, ARV. So if you are new to flipping, okay, then you're going to want to increase this 80%, okay? Sorry, or you're going to decrease this down, decrease it because you want more buffer room. Okay, so it's automatically calculated in there, like I have 80% in there. And then what it does, it says, okay, from my 350, my ARV times 80% is now going to be 280. Okay, minus all of my renovations. So I've already calculated my renovations to be 110. So that means my MAO, MAO, okay, or my maximum, okay, acceptable offer is going to be 170. That means I'm going to put an offer in at 170. That's it. Okay. Okay. So that is assuming that I have 110 repairs and that maybe I might be able to sell it for about 350. So this gives me a buffer room, okay, to play with in terms of repairs, holding costs, everything else. Okay. If I get closer to, you know, if I think my value is going to be closer to the 425, then I, at the most, will be putting in an offer at 230. Okay, so now you might be thinking, oh my God, Huong, that's insane. No seller is going to give you their place, you know, for, you know, a third of the amount, right? Okay, so here's the thing. You got to keep in mind, they're not selling it to you for 350 or 425. They're going to be selling it to you at, let's say, 300 or 275. Okay, because the place needs repairs, right? Because otherwise, if it's already newly renovated, you're not going to be putting in 100K. Okay, so keep in mind that if, you know, your after repair value is these numbers, the maximum offer price that you can give them on your purchase order, okay, is 170 to 230. So somewhere within that range is where you want to be targeting. Okay, now one of the biggest mistakes that I see from flippers is they underestimate their holding costs. So right here, you'll see on this spreadsheet, the calculation for holding costs, okay? This is an important part of your calculation. If you have no holding costs or very little, this is another way for you to basically not make any money. Okay, so this is the other way that you would potentially lose money. So to calculate the holding costs, what you're going to do is assume that, okay, I'm only going to get the minimum after repair value of the 350. So my purchase price that I'm going to be putting in is 170. My holding period is going to be 6 months. So this holding period is your renovation time, permitting time, demo time, you know, whatever you need to do, plus the selling time and the time that it takes to close the property. Okay, because keep in mind that when you sell the property and you get an acceptable offer on your property to sell it, it doesn't close that day. You don't make that money until 30 days, 60 days, or 90 days later when that person gets their own financing and then pays you out. Okay, so you need to include that in your holding, like your holding costs. Okay, so this is one of the numbers where, you know, when I work with individuals who want to get into flipping, they're like, Hung, you know what, my renovations are going to be 3 months, I'm going to put 3 months there. Like, no, it's going to take you 3 months, but then your agent, or you, if you're selling it yourself, you're going to need time to close, right? So it's never just, you know, the minimum amount of time that you think it is. Okay, so then you're going to put in all of the fees that you incur during that time. Okay, because while you're renovating, you have to pay taxes, you have to pay insurance, you have to pay for water and electricity there. Okay, so you want to put all of that in there. Okay, so in this case, we've got all, like, the closing cost 5%. We've got some property taxes. Okay, so this is from one of the examples that I ran. So now we're going to say, hey, you know what? We're actually going to we're going to borrow as much money as we can from our, you know, family, friends, our partners, and we're going to have to pay 10% on that money. So it's a private lend, right? So we're going to pay $6,800, okay, for just that 6-month period. Okay, then we're going to put, whoops, sorry. Okay, so that means our total holding cost for 6 months is $17,000. So if you think about it, that's almost $3,000 a month that you have to pay out. Okay, so you want to make sure that you include that, because that's part of the profit that you're gonna, like, it eats from your profit. Okay, so this automatically calculates your profit. So if you were to sell this property for $350,000, you would be making $50,000. If you sold this for $425,000, you'd be making about $127,000. Okay, so you want to make sure that whatever amount that is in this profit, okay, that you are happy with that number. Okay, so because I've seen some profits here like at 10K, and it's like, why would you do all that work for $10,000? Like, it just doesn't make sense, right? Or, you know, if something is like between 100 and, you know, 50 to 300,000, wow, okay, and it's 6 months worth of work, okay, well then that might be worth it, right? The other thing to think about when you are looking at flips is that if you've got a good team, you might be doing 1, 2, or 3, maybe 4 flips at a time, right? So if you're doing 4 flips in 6 months and each one gives you 50,000, that's 200,000, right? So, you know, now you also have to put in your salaries and all that stuff, which should be part of this 110. Okay, so you want to make sure that you're not just thinking about this one opportunity, but you're thinking about, okay, well, if I'm doing multiple flips at the same time, what's my overall return on investment there? Okay, so this is how a flip calculation is done. Okay, all right, let's go into the next calculation here. And I'm going to stop share just to make sure that I get the right screen up. And we are going to jump right into the next calculation. All right, so the next one is about GPLP. So where did that go? Here we go. Okay, so I am sharing with you. So this one I had to pull from my main sheet because I wanted to make sure that, you know, that I start from the basics and not overwhelm you with a lot of other numbers here. So this is the GPLP structure. And maybe what I'll do for the next session is talk about waterfall GPLP structures, because that's a slightly different calculation. So for this initial round, just, you know, we're going to focus on just understanding what a GPLP is and how the numbers work on that. Okay, so in this case, let's just say there's 2 GP partners. Okay, so the GP partner has 2 people in it. The LP has 3 people in it. Okay, so, and this is a 50-50 structure. Okay, that GP-LP structure can be, 50-50, 60-40. Oh, sorry, I should say 40-60. So 40 to the GP and 60 to the LP. It could be a 20-80. Okay, so 20% to the GP and 80% to the LP. So as the GP, I would run my numbers and see what would make sense for the LP and what would make sense for the GP. Okay, where does that percentage need to be for it to be an enticing package for the LPs to come in? And at the same time, is it worth that, like the portion for the GP, is it worth it for me, for my time? Okay, so in this case, let's just say it's a 50-50. So the total LP is 50. And let's just say in this case, we have the 3 LPs. They are going to invest $425,000. And let's just say each LP comes in at this dollar amount. So 150K, 100K, and 175K. So then the percentage breakdown is the 40 for so 50% for the GP and then 50% for the LP, broken out this way based on the amount of money they put in. Okay, so it's not that each LP gets 50, okay, or each LP gets 33%. Okay, the total for the LP is 50%, and the sum of all the percentages needs to be 100. Okay, so there's a lot of math behind this to make sure that everything adds up. Okay, so if we go with the GP, and in this example, I'm saying that there's 2 GPs in there, and one GP who's doing most of the work is going to get 40%. The other GP is only going to get 10. Okay, so that's for the GP to sort out. If you're an LP, you don't need to worry too much about how the GPs are, like what their percentages are. What you just want to make sure as an LP is, for the amount of money I put in, what is the equity that I own on that? And then in the long run, how much of that money is coming back to me along with the returns that I get. Okay, so let's just run this out. So let's just say on a project, every single year we're making 25%. Okay, so it's a multifamily commercial land. It doesn't matter what the opportunity is, we're making 25%. Okay, so then the split on that 25% per year would be based on the percentage of each person's equity share in the opportunity. Okay, so the GP would take 50%, and so that would be the 12.5 of the 25%. Okay, and then the LPs would then get 50%, because in this case it's a 50-50. They would also get 12.5%. Okay, so in total that comes up to the 25%. Okay, so they're going to get 50% of the 25, which is 12.5. Okay, all right. So then from there, let's just say every single year it's roughly 25%. Okay, so this is part of the responsibilities of the GP to calculate this and monitor it with the accountants. Okay, so a lot of the GP-LP structures are structured in a way where the money partners, which is the LPs, they get 100% of the money back. So their capital that they invested, they get that back before the GP sees any money. Okay, that's the majority of the structures out there. Okay, now keep in mind that the GPs need to make some sort of a living. Okay, they need to still be in the game to be incentivized to stay focused on this opportunity year over year over year. So there's usually, let's say, an acquisition fee, some sort of asset management fee that goes with it that they would sort of recoup throughout the year. So there is a bit of a minor fine print there. Okay, so usually the money partners get 100% of their investment back before the GPs see any profit. Okay, so what that means is, so let's just say, for example, this property is running and everything's going great. In 5 years, we go and we refinance. Okay, so that means we have an existing mortgage on it. The tenants are paying the rent down. There's every single year the GP's doing their work on it. And then in 5 years, we go to refinance, and we're going to be able to have an equity pullout of 750,000. Okay, so now I'm just pulling numbers out here. So as your GP is running the project, they will be able to give you a better idea of what this number is. Okay, it's not like as the years go by, you know how much the mortgage pay down is. You know what the appreciation roughly is, because you have that present appreciation value. Okay, so now this does not include your cash flow. Cash flow is a separate calculation on top of this. Okay, so let's just say in 5 years, you go and you refinance, and the bank's willing to give you an increase mortgage or a new mortgage, and you're going to be able to pull out $750,000. Okay, so that's great. So now the first payout, okay, so when you get that check, when the GPs get that check for 750, they have to go and pay out all of their expenses, meaning if there's any sort of outstanding debts, any renovation costs, any contractor costs, any of those things needs to be paid out first. Okay, then as if there's any money left over, which in this case, because it's 750, usually, there would be money left over, then all of the LPs get paid. Okay, so this is roughly how the breakdown would work. So let's just assume that there's no outstanding expenses. Everything has been running really well. The GPs have been paying all the contractors, all the accountant, legals, are all of those management fees. They've been paying that with the cash flow. So there's been no outstanding expenses. So if that's the case, then this would be the payout from the 750. So the GPs would see $0 from the 750, okay, as part of the second payout calculation. The LPs would get back 100% of the money, okay, or as much money as possible from the payout, from the refinancing. So in this case, there's enough money to pay everybody back their original capital investment. So all the LPs would get their money back. So this equals 425,000, okay, with 325,000 remaining, meaning there's still an extra 325,000 left to divvy out. So at this point, all of the investors have gotten their capital back. Okay, so now what happens with the 325,000? Okay, so that's where the exciting stuff happens as well. Okay, so it's always been exciting all the way through, because it's exciting to get 750,000 in equity pullout. That's really good. Okay, so then what happens as the third payout happens, and this is all happening at the same time. It's not like you have to wait another year. Okay, so when you get the refinance, you do the first payout, and then you do the second payout and the third payout. It's usually within like the same calculation. Okay, so then then you take the 325, and that's where everybody's getting paid out. Okay, so now the GP will see 50% of that 325. Okay, so the split there is 130 for the one GP, because they're going to get 40%. The second guy is going to get 10%. Okay, so the total there is 162,500. Okay, then the balance of that amount is also then going to be split according to the percentages for the LP. So if you go right across here, you'll see that one LP is going to get 57,000. The other one's going to get 38. The other one's going to get 66, close to 67,000. Okay, so the total there is also $162,000. Okay, perfect. So then the total of that, right, the split on all that money is 325. Okay, so now if you want to calculate the total that each person's going to take, that's just the sum of those two numbers. Okay, so the GPs, each one, the first GP makes, just the 130 over the 5-year period, and the second GP, the 32,005, the 32,5. So the first LP, so for example, this LP put in 150,000. Okay, they have 17.6% equity in the whole deal. Okay, so that means by the end of the 5 years, they're going to get their 150 back, plus make $57,000. So in total, they're going to get $207,000. $207,000. Okay, so now the other number that I like to look at when I'm calculating stuff like this is, what is my multiplier? Okay, so what that means is you get your original capital back, and some more. Okay, so what is that multiplier? So in this case, it's a 1.4 multiplier. Okay, so that means you get your original capital and then you make 40% on that money. Okay, so 1.4 is not a good return. Okay, it's okay, right? So usually when I'm looking at this, I want 1.8, 1.9, 2. Okay, the higher the multiplier, the better. Okay, there's this concept out there about 10xing your money. Okay, so that's like the dream goal, right? Is to 10x your money. So a 1.4 is okay. Okay, it really depends on what the property is. This could be a new build, and so you're not going to have as much renovations. There's not as much headache, not as much work. You know that you can turn and sell this, okay, for a lot of money down the road. So maybe the 1.4 is a good number, okay? So it really depends on the overall property and the strategy and the exit plan. Okay, so what else do I want to share with this? So with this particular calculation, it doesn't include any of the cash flow. So over the 5 years, right, if the property is running well, if there's cash flow after the reserve has been met, okay, that cash flow will be divvied out to your LPs, okay? And if you're getting cash from the operations throughout the year, right? And usually you might get it quarterly or semi-annually. Then that cash flow, that amount that you're getting back, pays down your initial capital. Okay. So in this calculation, we're assuming that you haven't gotten any cash flow back because you're getting the full amount. But let's just say during that whole 5 years, you received 50,000. Okay. Well, so then at this point, you would only get 100K because you would already gotten the 50, then the 100 would go pay you back for your capital. So then this third payout would be calculated slightly different. Okay, so as you can see, like for the 5 years, your GP is going to make their money at the end of the 5-year period. Okay, so yeah, so this is how a GP LP structure would look like. And depending on the amount of money you put in, okay, you would have a slightly different percentage of equity based on the amount that you put in, based on the amount that was needed to secure the opportunity. Okay, so if there is any questions from this or from the flip calculation, please send me an email or reply back in the chats and the comments, and I will add them to the next session. Okay, perfect. So that took the whole 30 minutes. Okay, so so let me take a step back here and let me unshare this. Okay, so I forgot to put the disclosure out there. So let me just put my disclosure out there that all of the stuff that I talk about here is my ideas, my own thought process. Take it as a suggestion, take it as education only. If you want to do any of the stuff that I'm talking about, please go talk to a lawyer or accountant, double check the stuff that I'm telling you before you go and implement it. Okay, so that is the disclaimer there. Okay, and I forgot to do this, which is actually really not so good of me. I want to do a big shout out. My virtual admin in the Philippines. I'm doing a big shout out to her. I found out recently that there was a hurricane in her area, and so they are, going through some hardship right now. So Abigail, I am thinking about you and your family, and I hope everything is going well. Just sending you lots of kindness and good wishes. Okay, my friend. All right, so let's move on. Okay, so we got the GPLP stuff. Okay, so let's go through a couple questions. I've got 6 questions here. So let's see. Okay, so some of these questions are hard to answer live, but I will do the best that I can. Okay. Okay, so this one is an interesting question. Why is square foot important? And if I'm sitting on, and what if it's sitting on a huge acreage? Okay, so this is coming through. So in terms of why is square foot important is one is that if the unit is small, you may not be able to get refinancing or financing from the banks. So some condos I know are like less than 450 square feet. Okay. Some banks will actually say, no, 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 we don't finance anything less than 500 square feet. Okay. So the strategies of the micro units and stuff like that, you just want to make sure that one can get financing if the square footage is small. The other reason why square footage could be important is because one strategy is to take the large square footage unit. So let's just say you have a 1-bedroom unit and it's 1,000 square feet. Well, you can convert that 1-bedroom unit to a 2-bedroom unit. Okay, because it's 1,000 square feet, right? Or let's just say it's 1,200 square feet. Well, then you can convert that 1-bedroom to a 2-bedroom unit. Okay, and increase the rents. Okay, so that's the other reason. The other reason why square footage is important is that think of the longevity of your renter living there. If it's a small space, that tenant may move out, especially like during COVID when people were stuck in their units. Think about it. If you have a small unit and you're looking at the same 4 walls, you're going to want to move faster than if you were in a bigger unit because you have space to not get bored, right? So if you want tenants to stay there longer, especially in a place where you don't have rent control, okay, the bigger the units, the better, especially the ones with windows and stuff. If you're in a place like where there's rent control, okay, well, then maybe you don't want your tenants to live there that long because you want that turnover so that you can increase the rents all the time, right? If the market allows for it. So there's a couple of reasons why square footage can be an important thing. Okay, so yeah, so that's square footage. Let's see. So, and then the second part of that question is, what if it is sitting on a huge acreage? Okay, so the thing with a huge acreage is that one, you're paying for the land, and yes, there's stuff that you could do with it. So that automatically changes your strategy. It's not just a buy and hold and rent out and get rental income. If you've got acreage, you could potentially build more units. Okay. So the seller's going to charge you more for that land. Okay. That extra land. So then your strategy is slightly different because now you're land banking. You have to go and get permits, development, potentially even change the zoning to allow what you have there to allow for more units to go on. Okay. So it's a different strategy because now you're buying and holding whatever it's existing there, plus potentially doing land development or subdivisions or something like that. So it's a different strategy. You may need to confirm the zoning because just because you have that acreage doesn't mean you can build on it, right? Especially like a farmland, right? It allows for a primary plus maybe a secondary operation, staff housing. That's it, right? It doesn't matter if you have acreage. You cannot build a multifamily on there. Okay, so that would be one thing to consider. The other thing is that some of the acreages may have environmental protection zones on them. So meaning it's a huge acreage, but there's a stream running by it or in it. So then that portion of that acreage, you can't build on it. Okay, so yeah, so having acreage is nice. It has that potential, but then you're getting into a very different strategy. Okay, so let's see here. Let's see. Oh, okay, so this one's a good one. Okay, so in the listing, it says a net of 62,000. My numbers do not show that. Okay, so I'm laughing because this is a common question. And one of the things that Mark Dupree always tells me is, Hong, you got to remember the sellers are always lying. Okay. And so you have to always double check and do your own due diligence. That's why you need to run your own numbers. Okay. So the sellers never ever show all of their expenses. Okay, so that's one of the reasons why in your offer letter, you want to make sure that you ask for the trailing 2 years expenses, trailing 3 years expenses, because you want to know what they're reporting out. Okay, so in our calculation, so in our previous recordings, our previous analysis, we always, and if you go back, you'll see set numbers in there that we have, right? So like we always use 10% for property management. We always have a 5% for CapEx. So some sellers, they self-manage. So then their expenses for property management maybe 0, maybe 2, maybe 5. Like I saw one where there was no property management at all. And this was like a 20-unit building. Okay. So you want to make sure that, that there's certain expenses that the sellers may not have in theirs. And that will explain the discrepancy in this net number that you're seeing. So one is property management, CapEx, pest control, securities. A lot of sellers do not include legals and bookkeeping in their numbers. Okay. So, if you look at our spreadsheet, we automatically have those numbers in. And so when we run the numbers, we are around, a 35 to 45% expense ratio. Okay. And so if you're running your numbers and you're at like a 30% ratio, that's probably on the lower end. If it's a newer building, okay, well, maybe you are down at the 25, 30%. Okay. But I would always caution you, like you want to be on the higher end of your expenses when you're running your calculation. And then as part of your due diligence, you're going to tweak that and improve that as best you can. Okay. And yeah, so I always use a higher number when I'm running my initial calculations, and then part of the due diligence working to decrease that. And then if we close and we're operating the building, then that's where we really want to decrease our expenses as much as possible. There's no way you can decrease it down to 0. So just keep that in mind that, when we talk about one of the ways to operate a building is you want to look at decreasing the expenses as much as possible. So, passing the utilities to the client as much as possible, decreasing property management fees. So if your building is big enough, right, you may want to have an in-house caretaker, right? Like somebody who's there every day just to clean up, rather than hiring a service outside and then having them come in, because those types of external services, your property manager may mark up their work, okay, for them to come in and do it. And then the property management team might be there. There's a lot of coordination. So property management fees can really eat into a lot of your rental income. Okay. What else can you do to decrease expenses? Your debt carrying costs on the property. So if you had to take out any private lends on it, at 10% or anything like that, you want to make sure that you pay those back as soon as possible and get down to a very low carrying costs on the mortgage, and potentially increase the amortization as long as possible. Look at maximizing or decreasing your property management fees. If possible, like if each unit has their own water metering system, and if the water is needed, right, you want to give the tenants as much of the utilities, including water, as possible. Water is a bit harder to do, so you may want to install an automatic water shutoff valve. So one of the things that I had to do in my triplex was the water was like insane for a period of time, and we couldn't figure it out. So this automatic water shutoff, the way it works is that if it detects a leak, okay, because if the water's running all the time, then there's a leak. So this water shutoff would shut off the water at the main source, and then nobody would get water in the building. But then that means you get a plumber in there, and then everybody troubleshoots. Okay. So that water shut off, I don't know, cost me $1,000. Okay. Well worth the installation. Okay. The other way to do it is that if your unit doesn't have separate hydrometers, you can look at doing that. There's these utility companies that will package your utilities for you. Okay. So that is a separate thing, a separate expense that you need to look at to try and decrease that. Okay, so other than the expenses, like, yeah, like the expenses are the expenses. If you're operating at like 50-60% expense ratio, there's got to be room there to improve. Okay, but if you're if you're running pretty lean and you're at 35 percent, that's pretty lean already. You could look at switching lawyers or accountants or something, but at the end of the day, a good lawyer and a good accountant firm is worth the price. Okay, just like if your property management fee is high, but they do everything and you have no headaches from that operation, that is a good management. Okay, now if you grow big enough, then you might want to bring those things in-house, right? So now it's your property management team, it's your legals, it's your bookkeeping. If you're at that level where you're running things, then bring them in-house. Okay, so that's another way to decrease expenses. Okay, so we are a little bit over time. So if you want to connect with me before next Monday, please do so by sending me an email or booking a time slot with me. Otherwise, I will see you next Monday. Thank you very much, everybody, for tuning in. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Okay, bye, everybody.